We are back, the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee. It's still July 29th, and the last item on our agenda is the Deputy State Auditor, Tim Ash, who I invited here because we heard earlier that there is an audit of the ERP project, and just wanted Deputy Ash to explain and let the committee know that this is happening and a little bit about what it is. So take it away.
Sure thing. Thank you, Chair Plunkett. Tim Ash, Deputy State Auditor. Andrew Keegan, who is a senior audit manager in our office, is joining me. And I'm glad to be here mostly to give a kind of a broad sense of what our audit entails, and but most importantly, a sense of timing and the extent to which it will be useful for this committee heading into the next session. So to hit the rewind button a little bit, our office has infrequently done an audit of IT projects specifically. We have done an audit about 3 years ago around the EPMO, the Enterprise Project Management Office at ADS, and their overall sort of system of keeping tabs on the price tag and schedule of larger IT projects. But that wasn't really an in-depth review of any one particular project. Back in the legislative session, it's no surprise to members of this committee that ERP, as it was continuing in its early phases, was the subject of a lot of discussion in the legislative committees. And I know that the presenters earlier from ADS and Agency of Administration have spoken to you many times about this project. Our office became interested in large part because while the ERP activities, the HR piece, the budget piece, the finance aren't particularly outward facing, they are really vital to the functioning of internal government, and that any signs that there were any warning signs or caution flags that had gone up in terms of the successful implementation really could be quite concerning. And this is not a small project, as you know, over $70 million all in. So we contemplated doing a performance audit and wanted to be sure that we weren't getting in the way of other individuals' work. We know that there had been gap analysis work being done at the direction of ADS, that there had been other reviews internally, and some analysis by Lisa at JFO. So we're trying to figure out, is there a role that we do something that is useful, helpful, moves the needle to make this project more likely to succeed? And after discussions with ADS, after discussions with Lisa, and just our observations, we decided a performance audit of this project made sense. I think we initiated the audit in mid-May. The work in earnest got started probably a few weeks later. At this point, the good news, it's all been good news in terms of our contract with CLA, which is the firm that's doing this work. CLA also does the single audit for us, the state's ACFR, which is the big financial audit. They have been getting great cooperation from ADS every step of the way. So all their requests for documents, information, access to things have all been going perfectly smoothly. We like to see that, obviously. And they are on schedule to complete the audit sometime in September. So the contract ends at the end of September. We expect to get a draft early in the month, and the turnaround once we have a draft should be pretty straightforward. So I think the good news for Jitoc is that the learning from that audit will be timely for you heading into the session. It won't be something that lands just when you've got a fire hose of information. I'm just going to briefly, and I hope this works, put up, there you go. So on our website, and now it's on today's page for the committee, is a copy of the contract itself. And I'm not going to obviously go through this in great detail with you, but the key for the committee, if you want to know what you're going to learn from this performance audit, it really falls under these buckets that kind of, I'd say, start with the project conception, the articulation of what the project was meant to accomplish, and how it should be designed to meet the state's needs. The project planning, where the steps being taken up front, everything from training and different responsibilities of the different parties to make sure that the project would be successful. System conversion, so we're taking these legacy systems and moving over to a new integrated kind of one-stop shop. That migration is the design and methodology likely to produce success. The functional analysis and evaluation, the cutover strategy, all of these pieces, which are absolutely critical, which the public probably falls asleep when they hear these terms. But they're the ones that when the project fails, if it ever does, it'll be because one of these steps wasn't done to the sort of best practices or, with the best design in mind. CLA is a national firm. That's one of the advantages of bringing them to bear both on the financial and single audits. But for this, they have already done performance audits or comparable reviews of several ERP implementations in other states. So we're getting the advantage of a team that includes staff who have gone in and actually got under the hood of other states that have generally not gone so well. So hopefully that learning comes and helps them inform ADS. So I'm going to wrap there, Andrew. I don't know if I spoke a little bit longer than I had expected to. But happy to field any questions. And of course, they will be ready to come and speak to the committee if the committee is interested, if the committee has a desire to kind of pool questions together in advance of their attending so that you don't get overwhelmed with a lot of technical speak in a Jitoc meeting. You can get those questions aired in advance. So they're ready to do all that.
That's great to know. Thanks. Any questions for Jeff?
So given the September report, will the report contain recommendations for path forward? And will that be independent of digital services and administration, agency of administration?
Yeah, if it is possible that ADS is getting an A+ and has got everything right. Usually when you do an audit, you find that there's room for improvement. So we anticipate there will be recommendations. And of course, the recommendations are meant to make this a success, not to find fault, right? So those recommendations will go to them. Even though ADS is really critical for the audit to go successfully and smoothly, all of the findings and recommendations will have been independently arrived at. So it's not like ADS will be editing those. When we do performance audits in general, not just this one, the auditee, ADS in this case, receives the draft for a reason. It's for them to be able to go through and see if the auditing firm or auditing office, the auditor's office, if we've missed something, if we've presented information which isn't quite accurate. So they have the chance to do almost like a quality control review. So by the end, when that audit's released, they may have different views about how to implement the recommendations. They may even say they don't want to implement some, but the information that's found should be incontrovertible. That's if we've done it right.
In terms of doing performance audits, one of the things we notice is that organizations that build systems over a certain dollar amount in Vermont have to bring in a firm that looks at what they're doing and provides a degree of oversight, very much like, if not actually, a performance audit. And typically it is an audit-related firm that does that kind of work. Do you, as the auditor's office, receive reports like that from those firms or from the agencies that have hired them? Do you have any oversight responsibility for the quality control, the effectiveness, the performance audit standard meeting of those firms?
If you're referring to the single audit requirement for entities in Vermont, which sometimes are non-government, to receive to have an audit complying with federal rules. Mm-hmm. We obviously don't have authority over non-state actors. But as you point out, there are state agencies that are being audited fairly frequently. Now, it's often the federal government itself which sends its team in to do those audits. Statute, it's almost a relatively passive arrangement. The statute requires those agencies to forward to the auditor's office any of those reviews.
Mhm.
Every year, once or twice, I send out a missive to all the agencies saying, don't forget your statutory requirements, get those to us. We post them all on a particular page on our website. And I think there's probably opportunity to tighten up that relationship because there are instances where an audit that would have otherwise gone completely under the radar and been almost an internal back office understanding of where some problems had occurred. We found them sometimes, and it led us to engage with an agency and say, this is actually a bit of a problem, and we're going to be monitoring this to make sure that you fix it. I know that there was one instance, I probably shouldn't pick on a particular instance, but it was several years ago. The state had to send, I think, $200,000 back to the federal agency that oversees the Office of Child Support. And it was related to some problems that had lingered. And it turned out that those were being flagged, but the auditor's office hadn't been receiving those periodic audits from the feds as required by Vermont statute. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I think there's an opportunity to strengthen that because there is a lot of work being done by other parties. We don't always know it. For the financial audits, we do get the audits from like the major quasi-state agencies like the HFA and VSAC and VEIC and some of the others.
Well, in particular, though, what I'm also referring to are reviews of information technology projects that are underway that are, in effect, independent looks by an outside organization, typically an audit firm, that reports back to the agency that is commissioning or supervising or paying for the project to be done. And the question is, do you have any look at what those reviews, particularly if they're done by an audit firm, because they're effectively performance audits at various points in time, do you look at what comes back? Does any of that come back to you?
We don't get it as a matter of course. Those project reviews that I think ADS hires firms to do it for the more significant projects. I think that's a fair conversation we could continue to have between.
If they are in fact performance audits, should they not come to the audit?
Well, they're often
office?
they're often called independent reviews.
Yeah, as opposed to performance audits. Yeah.
So I think that, I think that, and Andrew has taken over from our longtime IT specialist. So he's, you're getting your sea legs, which I think is really critical for the office, especially as IT spending has gone up so much. I think it's an interesting question about how much information an agency should give us in real time about a project they're working on. They don't want, for lack of, I don't know, this might sound glib, too many cooks in the kitchen at the very earliest stages. If you're paying handsomely for a firm with specialty to do the review in-house, the question is, you don't want then another audit being done at the same time, because then it would kind of never end. But I think getting the information, that's an important discussion to have with them.
Well, I guess the question that comes to my mind initially is this an independent quote review, or is this effectively a performance audit as to the project in real time? And one of the questions I would have is other states that do similar kinds of things. How are those kinds of reports handled? And is that something that you've looked at to see are this what you're doing consistent with what states that have effective audit processes generally are doing? And is there an opportunity to provide to in effect increase oversight? Because I know that your staffing levels for information technology audits don't seem to have changed in the past 20 years.
It has gone from 1 to 1.
Yes.
You might have created the one when you were the auditor too.
I did.
Well, you're giving work for Andrew here to do an analysis of how other states are handling this, because I think it's an important one. These independent reviews are obviously it's a client relationship. It's in service to the agency. We're obviously a different entity coming in with an independent, detached set of eyes. The question of when we should get that information, I think, is good.
Well, I guess one of the questions that would come to my mind initially is, are the independent reviews that are being done by these other agencies consistent with the kind of standards that we want as a state in terms of oversight?
Yeah, we can do a look back certainly on those, because there's plenty of experience as ADS and assuming contracts for a number of these over at any one time.
Yeah, I know Rep. Sebeli has a question, but just a comment, and I heard it from the gallery. The independent reviews for ADS are posted on their website. So what I'm hearing is that your shop doesn't regularly go and review them.
Yeah. Wasn't suggesting they aren't made available, just that it's not been a practice review.
So Rep. Sebeli?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the auditor might weigh in. Earlier, we were having a discussion about items that we might like to have ADS report more regularly to this committee and to the legislature. And there was discussion about perhaps an MOU between this committee and ADS. And then discussion about an MOU versus statute. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts about which might be more appropriate or how to make either appropriate.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rep. Sebelia. I know from discussions with your standing committee over the last couple of years, one of the challenges has been to know when you want to know. And I think that from our point of view, you have the great benefit of having Lisa as a resource. That resource is limited. She can't be doing all the projects. So it's really about directing her at what are probably either the highest risk projects, the ones with the largest price tag, or the ones that are going to affect people's lives, whether it's their work lives for the state or, the way people experience the receipt of benefits or other things that are critical to them. And I think, honestly, the legislature there's the passage of information, which has to be worked out, whether it's an MOU or statute. I actually think that the resources the legislature needs to dedicate on its own to this issue, that is probably more of a threshold issue in terms of oversight. Having one JFO consultant is, in the modern era, probably insufficient to oversee the wide array of big ticket IT projects. But I think, an MOU, an MOU is not necessarily a bad way to go. So for like the auditor's office, we have access to every state record effectively that's held by a state agency. That includes confidential information from, say, the Agency of Human Services or the tax department. Nonetheless, anytime we do an audit that relates to, personally identifiable information, personal health information, we always do an MOU with the agency so that everyone has a clear understanding of how the information will be handled, which is just a good practice anyway. So everyone knows how this stuff is being handled. So an MOU is all fine, but if you don't have the resources to get the deep dive on more projects in the way that Lisa's able to do for some projects, then I think MOU is not quite the most important question to resolve.
Thank you.
The legislature, as you know, does not provide a lot of money for analysis, for accountability work, and then for some of this technical work. And I've never understood why that's the case, but it has persisted as an underfunded part of being in the legislature. So
I would note that the legislature sometimes has a hard time also keeping up with an evolving economy and making sure that it's organized appropriately for providing that oversight. So good food for thought.
Could you, so I'm just wondering, as far as the scope of the audit, like, is that just where things are currently standing, or does that go all the way back to like how a vendor was selected, like the whole process of a project?
take that.
So it does go back, kind of looking at the, like Tim mentioned, kind of the planning that went into the project up to kind of how it's being managed.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks.
The emphasis is not on relitigating some of the issues.
Sure. I was just curious if it's gonna cover the whole.
Yeah, I think, in the look back part of the audit, I think it's really to say were the right practices going into place to make sure that the design of this thing, anticipating the kind of training needs, the integration of systems, all those things from the onset, were they being done in an ideal way. It's not going back to some of the discussion about procurement and things that have already been played out, I think, in other examples.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Great. And I thank both of you, appreciate it. We look forward to end of September.
Yeah, we'll let you know if anything goes off the rail timing wise. We don't anticipate that. And then if you want, you could, I don't know if you already have your meeting scheduled for the rest of the session.
So far, September 30th is our next one, whether we had to reschedule August 20th. So maybe we may or may not have one in between.
Okay, so it could be, if we were going to be ready to be done by that point, we'll let you know. It's up to you how you want to have us come in, but it could be ready as soon as September 30th, if not one of your subsequent meeting.